Crossroads of the Ozarks, it's P.I.D. Radio. Welcome, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and once again, we're delving into topics that just are way over our own heads.
Yeah. As we've been doing since 2005.
That's exactly right. You can't stop me from punching again, above my weight.
That's it. And if you want to check out how we've been doing this for the last 17, going on 18 years now, check out our app. It is free. It gets you all of our content, not exclusive to PID Radio, but it gets you our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, Unraveling Revelation, my podcast, A View from the Bunker, and Sci Friday. All of that, plus classic PID Radio and classic View from the Bunker. Views from the bunker, probably, like attorneys general.
Oh, yeah. Going
back more than a decade. All of that in the palm of your hand. Also available for Roku and Apple TV. You'll find that link at gilberthouse.org/app or pidradio.com/app.
If you are one of the few people out there who want to just constantly hear us in your ears, then this is the app for you.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of content. I added it all up at Spreaker, which is where it's all available, and we're wanting to move it to the app as well so that it's all archived in one place, easy to access. But,
at a Christian company.
At a Christian company, hosted by a Christian company. Spreaker has all of the audio content from the podcasts. The app will have the audio and the video programs as well. But it's more than 1,600 hours of content that we've created just for audio. That doesn't count the 169 episodes of Unraveling Revelation now. Plus, coming up on 300 of Sci Friday.
As you call your blog, this truly is a bloated weapon of mass distraction.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you for...
So if you need distraction.
Yeah. And a look at what's going on in the world around us, but not from a spirit of fear.
We really don't look at it that way. Derek and I look at some of the darkest stuff you can imagine. I'm sure that there is much darker out there that we've just not come across yet. But we really don't have a spirit of fear. The Lord himself holds us in his hand.
And that's not to say that we don't take this seriously.
If we
didn't take this seriously, we wouldn't be doing this. We'd be out, doing yard work, or I'd be, writing or something. But we do this because we want to shine a light into those dark places, which is what PID stands for, Peering into Darkness. And why we began this journey back in 2005 as an outgrowth of writing, which began in 2002.
I know. We talked about our book for, I don't know, one show, two.
Yeah.
And said,
here's why you should buy
now?
our books. Now what? So, this is really 20 years that we've been doing this. If you start from when we began writing.
In 2002. Yeah. Right.
Writing supernatural fiction, which has morphed into your 8-book series, now 8 books in the Red Wing Saga. Book 9 is well underway, and the 2 nonfiction books we've authored together. I've got 5 others. So, again, we take this seriously enough to devote a lot of research and study to it. But at the end of the day, God has seen the end from the beginning, and he is not bothered. I mean, he's not fearful, so neither should we. Yes, he is bothered. That's why he's coming back at the head of a heavenly army.
It's the ultimate big brother in the playground. I mean, if you're feeling scared, know that he is there with you.
Yeah.
It's a concept that I stress in the Red Wing Saga again and again and again. 2 things. God does really work everything together for good. Your free will choices, the free will choices of the fallen realm, all of it worked together for good according to his plans and his purposes, because he knew from the beginning that all of this was going to happen, and yet he's working it together for good. The other thing is that you are never alone. You are never alone. Write that on your fridge or make a wall hanging out of it, whatever. Just remind yourself, say, I am never alone.
That's right. And I love the way you put it in your presentations on the 23rd Psalm. If the fallen realm has driven you to a place of despair or fear, remember the good shepherd is right behind you with a rod and a staff, and he's ready for an epic cosmic level smiting beatdown.
Oh, smack down the shepherd against good shepherd against the bad shepherd. Good shepherd will win every time.
That's right. Got a problem with me? Talk to the shepherd.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
that's why we do. We still laugh a lot.
Yeah. And so again, don't confuse our joy and the happiness that we feel for a lack of concern with what's going on around us. We do see what's going on, and it's very easy to, and you wisely talk me enough to ledge every now and then when I start getting wrapped up in the political game, and really it is a game because contrary to what the corporate media would like us to believe, I mean, it was pretty obvious to anyone with impartial eyes to observe what happened in the last election, the presidential election at least, statistically improbable. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to get the channel pulled.
No, but more than that, that's not the point.
But the point is that that's not where our efforts should lie. But the media deliberately portrays this like presents it to us as though it's some sort of athletic contest.
Exactly. By the way,
scoreboards and
the fact that you had to say we don't want to get canceled in any way, that's why you really need to download the app.
Yes.
It isn't so that we don't make any money on that app. It's seriously, we pay this Christian company. They provide so many wonderful services, including storing all of our content. So we know it is safe there.
Right.
If you want to make sure you never miss anything we talk about, Skywatch TV talks about, L.A. Marzulli talks about, there are so many ministries that are using this company. It's called Subsplash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, L.A. Marzulli's app is there. Skywatch TV, as you mentioned, Prophecy Watchers. A number of other ministries that Doug Hamp is using it. Ken Johnson uses it. So there are many others who are using it as well. And because it is a Christian company, they are not going to censor us.
We're glad to be on Mars Hill for now. We really are. We need to be there. And so that's why we try to be careful. Just because we don't say something, don't assume that we don't think about it.
Yes.
Trust me, there are a lot of things that we consider. But getting back to what you were talking about, you and I both discussed, this is political. Both of you have discussed, written about the Great Reset. So this is topic number 1, P.I.D. Radio this week. The Great Reset has, in its simplest form, the World Economic Forum would like to sort of go back to the beginning. They want to just render everything null and void that is currently existing in our geopolitical structure and begin again, which is supposed to somehow lead mankind to this golden realm, this utopia moment. No, that isn't going to happen. But it's become very fractured. Those participating in that Great Reset, they don't all agree on how it will be implemented, nor do they agree on who will benefit. Right.
And there's a good story on this at the American Thinker online, AmericanThinker.com. It's a good op-ed site, but a good news analysis site from a conservative and often Christian point of view. The rise of China, and we wrote about this in Giants, Gods, and Dragons, in the section on the rider on the black horse. I also wrote about this for one of Tom Horn's anthologies, and I'm going to forget which one, but it dealt with, I want to say it was, the one with saboteurs, I think.
Okay, so you're talking about a multi-author book, not a fiction anthology.
Correct.
Most of us, when we hear anthology, we think fiction.
Ah, gotcha. Dealing with the rise of China and its emergence as a global powerhouse, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis has written a couple of books that I would recommend on this particular subject. His most recent is Kings of the East, which obviously is a reference to the book of Revelation, the Kings of the East, the 200 million, army of 200 million, but also Alliance of Evil, which deals with the growing alliance between Russia and China. China started on its road toward economic power about 50 years ago when it began to open up after the death of Mao Zedong. And they began to partner with the World Economic Forum and a much younger Klaus Schwab.
And Nixon went in and opened up China to the West.
And so the thought was, and we in America should learn this by now after our experiences in Vietnam and Afghanistan and Iraq, but we should have learned from this before we got involved with China and trying to nation build in China. If we open them up, we show them the benefits of Western capitalism, they will just want to be like us, and they'll be open to us. And plus, we'll get 1 billion new customers for our corporate businesses here in the U.S. That's not what happened, and it's not what's happening.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite,
happened.
Right? China is now running the show. They are running the World Economic Forum.
They're socializing the West. Exactly.
And they're doing this through a variety of things. First, they've stolen our industry with the collusion. I can't blame this on the Chinese, through what Colonel McGinnis calls, it's a term that he and other analysts in that realm, geopolitical realm, use, called elite capture. Mm-hmm. They find people in positions of authority who are willing to sell themselves for their own personal benefit and sell out the people they're supposed to represent, which is us, the American taxpayer. And that moved a lot of our industrial and manufacturing capacity to China to save a few bucks and increase profit margins for these corporate entities here in the West. They're also doing it through things like the 1,000 Talents plan, where they are co-opting intellectual property and research paid for by American taxpayers from our universities, Canadian universities, UK universities, and sending it all back to Beijing. China has much higher, and this is a nice way of putting it, social cohesion than we do in the West. And they achieve that by... leader. Yeah. They do that by enforcing uniformity and conformity. The old saying in the Asian East that the nail that sticks up is the one that gets hammered. It's, not an exact translation, of course, but basically independent thought is not encouraged, especially in China.
It's group thought.
Yeah. And they also don't appreciate diversity. Just ask the Uyghurs in the West, in Xinjiang province, how, the Han Chinese who dominate Chinese politics appreciate diversity. That really should disturb you when you see elites here in the West hailing China. Oh, their response to the pandemic has been wonderful. Yeah, because that's what they want to do here. That's the World Economic Forum's idea. Mm-hmm. They want to impose Chinese-style socialism, social credit scores, and central government control over everything, including your currency. China's already rolled out its digital yuan, digital currency, which the Federal Reserve Bank in New York is now has just launched a 12-week trial run with some pretty big players. That's what they want to impose on us. The thing that the Western elites, the globalists behind the World Economic Forum, don't seem to understand is that China is not a partner with the World Economic Forum here. It's been using the World Economic Forum for the last 50 years to leverage, it's leveraging the World Economic Forum to increase its own economic power. And when it no longer needs the WEF anymore, it's like over the side it goes, and China becomes the world's dominant global power, which will probably happen before the end of the 21st century.
So they're not in agreement with Schwab, are they?
They are not. They are using Schwab insofar as they see benefit to themselves in gutting the Western middle class.
What about Russia?
Russia is been forced into China's arms by this long-running geopolitical competition between North America, or let's say the Anglo-Saxon West, the UK or Britain, specifically England, Canada, United States on the one side, and our allies in Western Europe to a lesser extent, and Russia on the other. And this goes back years. You know this from your research for the Red Wing saga, that the competition between the West and Russia, which resulted in the Crimean War and that horror show, continues to this day. It's never really ended. It just has flare-ups here and there. But at the end of the day, it comes back to whatever the god of, and that's small g, by the way, of the UK is on the one side, of England on the one side, and the god of Russia on the other, assuming they're two separate entities and not one entity that's just pitting those two sides together for the purpose of divide and conquer.
Well, the West called it the Great Game, but Russia referred to it, and I'm probably mispronouncing this, tournure. It means Game of Shadows, Tournament of Shadows.
Ah, I like that. That'd be an excellent book title.
Well, I've thought about that. Yeah, and it has been. But yeah, Russia and China have not historically been on the same page with regards to communism / socialism, whatever you want to call it. In fact, they've been very much opposed. However, as you have said, Russia has been forced to cooperate with China for now, especially as we get into an energy scarcity because of the Ukraine invasion. And trust me, this is all as far as the fallen realm is concerned. This is their way of achieving that moment when they're ready for the return of Christ. The fallen realm are aware of biblical prophecy. They understand, and they believe, I can see this. I can just see it, that they understand he's coming very, very soon because they can read the signs. And they're trying to prepare their own army. It's the prelude to that moment when the frogs, if you want to put it, come out of the mouths of the Antichrist and the false prophet and the beast, and they go throughout the world to gather a great army that will move into Jerusalem to fight the return of Christ. However, the Lord is still in control. And so this long spiritual war has been, sort of the brakes have been put on by the Lord, because he knows when he is going to, only he knows when he's coming back.
Right.
It's interesting to watch the fallen realm and their theopolitics move chess players, humans, all over the globe, getting things set up. Oh, rats, not yet. Okay, move this one. Oh, rats, not yet. Okay, this one. You can almost hear their frustration and their little, slide presentations at the fallen realm conventions and their equivalent of the TED Talks. The dead talks. They sit there and they go, well, I'm pretty sure I've been watching this, and I think I can see that he's going to be coming back on this date. That date goes by.
Yeah.
That century goes by.
You have to think that 100 years ago, they must have thought time was really, really short when we got past World War I.
200 years ago with Napoleon.
Sure. And then World War II comes out and emerges, and Hitler takes the world stage, and they may have thought that he was the one, their man.
World War I was being set up for the previous 50 years or so. In fact, in some ways, it was an extension of the Napoleonic Wars. The sick man of Europe, if you want to call it that, the Ottoman Empire, they were dying. They were crumbling into dust because the Ottomans were losing control of those satellite nations that very far away, and it's very difficult to govern them because they are so far away. And back then, they didn't have airplanes. They didn't have the internet.
Right.
In fact, for a long time, they didn't even have the telegraph. So instant communications didn't exist. But in many ways, the actual trigger point, as we look historically, World War I is always said to have begun when an archduke was killed. That was set up for weeks, if not months and years in advance, because it was orchestrated by a man who went by the pseudonym of Apis.
As in the Apis bull of ancient Egypt.
Yes, indeed.
Interesting.
Yes, indeed. He was the head of the 10-member, if you want to call it the round table, that ran the Black Hand Secret Society.
Oh. They were the ones claimed responsibility for the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, right?
Yes, they did. They had little sleeper cells that were 4 to 5 people. That was it. So you left wouldn't know what the right hand was doing. But this Black Hand, I think they were also called unification or death. Clearly not in English, but that's what it roughly translates to. I would argue that those secret societies, and some I've not found really good, clear scholarship on it, but it appears that secret society also had secret activities that may have involved ritualistic behavior. So that gets into Red Wing Saga territory.
Yeah.
But
making a note.
Well, I think that the fallen realm have always had what we would define as secret societies working with them, and that's why I write that in the Red Wing Saga, that these fallen realm entities are working through the humans to put their little pieces into position ready for the return of Christ, which gets us back to the World Economic Forum. I don't think that the humans most of the humans involved in that are aware that they're being used like pawns.
Agreed.
Maybe it's possible some do, but I would argue that most of them don't. If not, all of them may not.
Yeah.
No. But they are being used.
Yeah.
And China is being used. Russia is being used. The United States is being used. So when you see, when you only look at politics, you run a risk of wanting to get out on the ledge, so to speak, and just freak out.
Missing the big picture. It's watching how the pieces are put on the board. Those are just the shadows of the real conflict that's taking place in the spirit
realm. The game
realm.
of shadows, the tournament of shadows, exactly.
Right. Well, you just come up with the title for this episode, Tournament of Shadows.
There you
Making a note.
Notes, I got notes.
Yeah, we'll make notes during the episode. It saves on post-production time.
You're using a pen and paper.
I am. Oh,
How
yeah.
old-fashioned are you?
You never know. The internet could go out at any minute. But it will be interesting to see how this plays out, because as the fundamental difference between the West, and this article is written by Robert A. Taft, by the way, if you want to look it up at AmericanThinker.com. He analyzes
American Thinker.
Yeah, I slurred. The pancakes this morning. I'm just on a sugar high.
Blueberry pancakes. Nom nom. So they were healthy, right?
Oh, yeah. With the blueberries? Yeah. That's right. Antioxidants.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Just because they were in a simple, carbohydrate substrate.
Yeah. A matrix, if you will.
A matrix. But we did top it with maple syrup, so actual maple syrup.
Real maple.
So
no high fructose in this household.
No, we don't do that.
4 main differences between the West and the East is how the globalists are trying to break this down. And this is where China and the globalists of the West, the World Economic Forum, will split. Number 1, the environment. We are kneecapping our economy. Europe is kneecapping its own economy over environmental concerns. China, on the other hand, has an economy based on carbon that will continue to be based on carbon for the foreseeable future. It emits about 27% of the world's carbon dioxide, which is more than the EU, the United States, and Japan combined. And they don't care because it's a cheap, inexpensive source of energy.
But they're countering that. China now has a rocket designed to operate on methane. Now, the question is, does that mean that they have a couple of cows on there with some, stuff to eat,
a contraption, contraption hooked up. Okay, food production is second. Again, the West trying to come up with more bioengineered foods to get around the production of cattle, which is good because the Chinese will need them to, fuel their rockets, while we'll be eating crickets instead of beef. No, thank you. Global currency and global governance. Basically, the East, that's China, Russia, and, really BRICS. They've BRICS Plus now.
Explain that, BRICS.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then the plus is Saudi Arabia and perhaps Venezuela and Iran. That's about a third of the world's GDP, about 40% of the world's population right there. And they are not on board with the whole war in Ukraine. They are basing their economies on what the West used to do, which is an industrial capitalism sort of model, even if it's centrally controlled in the case of Russia and China. And in the West, we're engaging in financial capitalism. We don't really invest in producing anything. We just invest in other investments.
Here's another interesting tidbit from the past week or so. Germany is out.
Oh, the World Cup?
They sind raus. They are out of the World Cup running, which is highly unusual for Germany not to make those final 16.
Yeah.
It's just unheard of. Now, you told me yesterday why Germany may have actually come out ahead on that.
Yeah, they... Of course, if you've been following the World Cup at all, here in the United States, the World Cup is sort of like...
Yawn.
Meh. Basketball season is on.
Well, because it's in Qatar,
football.
I started taking a very close look at it. Heed. Yep. Watch it every day.
So a number of the teams participating, if you're outside the U.S., we know it's football. But here in the U.S., football is something completely
Apparently
different.
It's soccer down in Australia, too, because they call themselves the Socceroos.
All right. Well, good for you, Australia. Right on. The German team, the UK team, we're all protesting Qatar's stance on gay rights. Okay. And the government of Qatar has not been very supportive of the rights of the soccer teams and the players to express their opinions. So the German team got their picture taken with their hands over their mouths, which was a political statement. And then they went out and they promptly lost to Japan or whoever it was that beat. I don't. Maybe it wasn't Japan, but anyway, they got knocked out. Did not make the knockout round, the final 16. And then a week after that, Germany signed this massive deal to buy natural gas from Qatar. So the German government, we stand in support of our team and blah, 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 and one love and love wins and all this. Now, can you sell us some gas, please? Because they don't have Nord Stream anymore.
No, they do not. They need to get it from someplace, and if they cannot get it from Russia.
Yeah. And this is another interesting thing, and why I think China is going to emerge out of all this. China and Russia. I titled one of my episodes for 5 and 10 this week on Skywatch TV, Putin's winning. Because European politicians, high-ranking European politicians, this story was in Politico earlier this week, are really, really upset at the Biden administration for two things. Number one, although none of them said it, I believe they're a little bit peeved about the whole Nord Stream thing. We don't know for sure who blew the pipeline, but it was a very sophisticated operation. Had to be done by an advanced special ops team, either the UK or the US. Probably don't know. We'll never know. We don't have those kind of sources. But the Inflation Reduction Act passed here in the United States, another one of those bills that proves that if you want to know what it does, read the title, assume the opposite, includes subsidies and tax breaks for American businesses that will penalize European businesses. So the EU now already facing a cold winter because of the lack of gas coming from Russia, the pressure that's been applied to the European Union to stop importing Russian oil. They just announced, as we're recording this yesterday, that they're going to put a $60 a barrel cap on Russian oil. And Putin's like, don't care. Looking at the balance sheet of Russia for this past year, they're actually making more money because the price of oil has spiked than they were before the sanctions went into place. So Europe is now suffering not only higher energy prices, which may cause social unrest as people find themselves unable to heat their homes this winter, their businesses are suddenly finding it impossible to compete because of A, higher energy costs, and B, penalties from the United States, supposedly their ally, over this whole Ukraine war thing. So the Western alliance against Russia is fracturing, and it's in large part because of the neocons inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C., demanding that this war in Ukraine continue at all costs. But it seems that most of the cost is being borne by the Europeans. You
were talking about that's so true. That is so true.
No, let me rephrase that, though. The main cost is being borne by the people of Ukraine. That's the one thing.
Yes.
Regardless of who you want to blame for this war, neocons, Putin, don't care. The people of Ukraine, millions of whom have been forced to leave their homes over this war. And there will be a reckoning. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will repay.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned the Nord Stream 1 and 2. 2 never quite opened up. One had been had been transporting gas for a long time. The Brits just announced that they have deployed underwater drones to patrol that whole area. Now, theoretically, there should be repairs taking place, but they're essentially going to have to relay everything and replay it.
Yeah.
I think this shows that the Brits and the United States have been working together for a long time, even though we may, there may be rhetoric out there that makes it sound like we're maybe not getting along. With regards to our intelligence agencies, they work hand in glove.
Yes, that came out, 10 years ago when the revelations began to emerge about spying here. And this was before... the fellow who broke things, who had to go hide in Russia.
I'll think of it in a minute.
So will I. Anyway, the guy who broke that story, we actually had an episode of P.I.D. Radio going back to, I think, 2009.
Yes, long time ago.
Where we, because there was a story reported in the corporate media for anybody who cared to pay attention that the AT&T hub in San Francisco had been tapped by the NSA. And they called it a country tap. And a court actually tossed out a lawsuit that was filed by a privacy group saying that they didn't have standing because they couldn't show any specific harm to any one person because the whole country was being wiretapped at once. They said no one person has standing to sue.
Well, exactly.
What? So, I mean, okay, if I'm going to rob one person sticking up a liquor store, I can go to prison for that. But if I rob the entire country, violate the constitutional rights of all 340 million of us or whatever, okay, well, nobody can sue me because no one person is standing. That's what it came down to.
That is really wild. Well, you're right. CIA is not allowed to spy on American citizens. So if they want intel, they either have to break that rule or go laterally, which is how it's done. They go to GCHQ, stand behind an operator at a computer keyboard. Oh, I just happened to take a picture of the screen or a printout or whatever. Thank you very much. Now I know all about, Mr. and Mrs. XYZ.
Edward Snowden, by the way.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, people were shouting at it. That's what they do.
We heard you.
We heard you. We finally
across space
heard
and time.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Actually, we went back into the past. We retrieved it, came forward, and waited. So you'd think that we just had to look it up now, but the fact is that we went back in time. We used Josh Peck's wormhole technology.
Yeah, he keeps it in a shed out in the backyard.
In a box by the door. He and Eleanor Rigby. That's insane. Yeah. That is so insane. Where was I going? Yes, intelligence agencies. Well, China is playing that same game. Huawei there are so many devices already installed throughout the UK and parts of the United States that CCTV cameras, other devices that may be in your home and you just don't know it, and maybe a component within something else you've bought that perhaps even has another name. These are used to gather information. Now, most of it's frankly junk, but every once in a while something in there might actually be worthwhile, especially with regards to Chinese expats. These are people who have left China for whatever reason. It may be a political reason. They may be seeking asylum, but they live in the United States or the United Kingdom or Canada and many other countries. And China has installed secret police stations that are going in and enforcing Chinese law on foreign soil. Exactly. Right. They're not allowed to do that.
Well, they shouldn't be doing it. It's a violation of diplomatic etiquette.
If they can pull you into the embassy.
Right.
And that's where many of them are. Yeah,
and the embassies are there to handle the needs of expats in other countries. Like if you need to renew your Chinese driver's license, you go to the embassy in Amsterdam.
Yeah, or the consulate.
Or the consulate if it's not a national capital. But they've opened these secret police offices in a number of them in Europe. I know that there are several in Canada. I think there were like 3 or 4 in Toronto, but there was one in New York City. In I think it was Brooklyn. It was above a noodle shop, stereotypically enough. But
man from Uncle, it's in the dry cleaners. Yeah, Del Floria's.
But they didn't ask permission. The Chinese government didn't ask permission. They just did it. And then when they were called out on it, for example, in the Netherlands, they called the Chinese ambassador to explain, and they tried to say, well, these are there to just to offer services to Chinese citizens. But again, that's what the embassy and the consulates are for, to do that sort of thing. You got a legal issue back in the home country you need to resolve. You go to the consulate, you go to the embassy. You don't go to the secret police station. They really were there to ride herd on Chinese communities of Chinese expats living abroad.
Yes. Well, China has also been buying up land and buildings close to sensitive locations.
Yeah, talked about that on Skywatch TV some months ago, in fact. The FBI woke up from its slumber, or got distracted from from its task of chasing down Americans who ask the wrong questions, to notice that the Chinese had very graciously offered to build a traditional Chinese garden in Washington, D.C. Oh, what a cultural windfall this is for our nation's capital, a traditional Chinese garden. And the FBI said, wait a minute, that's on the highest piece of land in D.C. It's got direct line of sight to the United States Capitol. They can listen to Congress from there, and secret discussions taking place. And I think the final tip-off for the FBI was that they wanted to inspect the building materials that were being sent in from China rather than source here in the United States. I mean, hey, we make structural steel here in the United States, a lot of it. In fact, when I was selling structural steel, almost all of the plate, beam, bar, channel, etc., was made right here in the U.S. We don't import much in the way of foreign structural steel. Chinese were sending it all in, and they wouldn't allow government authorities or customs inspectors to look inside the crates. So it was likely there were electronic listening devices in many of those crates.
Do you think so?
Yeah. And then a lot of the land they were buying up just happened to be close to U.S. Air Force bases and so forth. So, why are you putting up a cell tower out here in the middle of rural North Dakota? I mean, or whatever, Wyoming, there's nobody around to use it. Oh, no, it's really important for us.
Well, we're now going to leave the sort of geopolitical tournament of shadows and move into shadows themselves.
Okay, well, you want to take a break and then come back with that after the break?
Good idea.
Yes, so from geopolitics to theopolitics on P.I.D. Radio. Spiritual warfare is where the rubber meets the road for us as Christians, but often we treat it as though it doesn't really exist. Well, during the month of November, we're tackling this subject head on as we celebrate the release of Sharon's new novel, The Poisoned Pawn, Book 8 in the Red Wing Saga, a series that teaches spiritual warfare through compelling stories featuring characters that you come to know and love. As part of this special package, we're offering the important new book by our friend Vicki Joy Anderson, They Only Come Out at Night, where she looks at the phenomenon of night terrors or sleep paralysis, examines what the medical community says about it, and then digs into the spiritual forces behind it. And the good news, that there is a way to make it stop. We're also offering our 2-disc DVD set, Unmasking the Ancient Gods, a series of presentations on spiritual warfare, everything from the UFO phenomenon to Jack the Ripper and spiritual warfare in the 19th century, which is really where the storyline of the Red Wing Saga begins. Bought separately, this package is worth $65, but it's yours for just $35 plus shipping and handling during the month of November only. Our spiritual warfare special offer, available only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store. And as always, we thank you for your prayers and your support. Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. We want to remind you of a couple of things. One is that we're going to Israel in March of next year, 2023, and it's not too late.
No.
You can still sign up.
We had a request this morning for more information, and we are just looking forward to trying to get as many people as we can on that third bus, which means we've got at least 100 on this tour.
And we may have an announcement coming soon regarding someone special.
Another special guest, perhaps. We will know within a week or so, I think. So you can check out the information, get a look at a sample itinerary, even look at the tour videos that we put together from our 2 previous visits to Israel at gilberthouse.org/travel, or click the link pidradio.com. I'll put a link in the menu bar that says travel with us.
Sounds like a good idea. So I hope you get to go. Also, while you're at gilberthouse.org, take a look at our store because we've got some specials this month. And we've also held over the November special. It's now called the Spiritual Warfare package. Because it includes Vicki Joy Anderson's amazing book, very useful book, especially if you have kids and grandkids in your house that say that they're seeing things or having bad dreams.
Yes.
This is a book for you. It's called They Only Come Out at Night.
Mm-hmm. Deals with sleep paralysis and the spiritual forces behind it.
Yeah,
also
she's
includes,
experienced that.
She continues to.
Yeah.
It is an area where the enemy continues to attack her, but she's been prepared for this particular topic. And what's really interesting is that she's getting a lot of interview requests from non-Christian podcasts and media outlets that are curious about this. And so she's had the opportunity to witness and share her experiences as a Christian and how to deal with this. So God has opened some doors here. And in the book, she includes some very practical steps and also some helpful prayers or prayer suggestions. I mean, these prayers are not to be used as, say, a ritual formula to drive away the demons, but just an idea for how to pray, asking God for his protection and his ministering angels to protect you, your children, your grandchildren, if this is something that has been plaguing you. All of us have dealt with it at least once in our lives, but some people deal with it almost every night. And so, look for the Spiritual Warfare special offer in the offers section, the special deals section at the Gilbert House store.
Yeah, and we're happy to say that Poison Pawn is back in stock. We ran out of it.
Praise God.
We've had to buy more copies many, many times now. Thank you, Lord. Getting to the idea of the tournament of shadows and shadows themselves, I found an interesting story a couple of days ago regarding a priest's comment. He's in the Diocese of Syracuse in the state in Washington, and that is. His name is Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, and he is not only a psychiatrist, he's also an exorcist and a priest. So he was asked about demonic activity, and he said he believes that pornography addiction is an opening to the demonic.
Yeah.
This is a guy that works with demons because he's an exorcist.
I'm glad you flagged this story because I had flagged it too to talk about. So we're on the same page there. What's the difference? I see that he's actually been working 30 years as a licensed psychologist. So what's the difference between psychologist and psychiatrist?
Psychiatrist has an MD.
Okay, so he's been working as a psychologist, and he is again, as you say, an exorcist for the Archdiocese of Washington, which is really, really remarkable.
So this is actually someone, and he's contradicting Pope Francis in this, because I think Pope Francis is saying that it does not lead to demonic activity, if I understand correctly. But whether he's directly contradicting the Pope or not, which is a big deal coming from, a priest over here in the United States. Of course, it won't be the first time that American Catholics disagree with Rome. Yeah.
Pope Francis had said, and I'll quote now, "The devil enters from there." Now, let me go back. Dear brothers, be careful of this, talking about pornography. And this was a warning to seminarians who were studying in Rome. The Pope said, "Dear brothers, be careful of this. The pure heart, the heart that receives Jesus every day, cannot receive this pornographic information. And if from your cell phone you can delete this, delete it so you won't have temptation at hand. And if you can't delete it, protect your self-property so you don't have access to this. I tell you, it weakens the soul. The devil enters from there."
Oh,
it
that's
weakens
interesting.
The priestly heart. But there was a German priest, Father Hermann Backhaus, which is a news. He gave an interview to the news outlet for the Roman Catholic Church in Germany. Said that connecting porn to the demonic is a spiritual exaggeration. So this.
He's contradicting the German.
He's contradicting the German, right? So I mean, we have legitimate concerns and criticisms of Pope Francis, but on this, he is correct. But this German priest, Father Backhaus, said that you can't connect pornography to the demonic. Well, yeah, you can. Absolutely, you can. In fact, Vicki Joy Anderson, coming back to They Only Come Out at Night, addresses that in the book. It is a doorway that opens you to spirits and forces that will pull you in a direction you don't want to go.
And it's a doorway that has been being forced upon young minds. Yeah. Sometimes in school.
Yeah. I will be talking with Opal Singleton. It's Singleton Hendershot now.
Oh, that's right.
Of millionkids.org. We interviewed her 7 years ago when she came out here to the Ozarks for Skywatch TV, but we'll talk with her again soon. She's been working with police departments in California. She also worked with producers of a new documentary called Sextortion, which is a really evil practice where groomers are using kids who've been lured into sharing inappropriate photos, images of themselves over the internet or through text messages or chat apps or whatever, into then becoming complicit or
they're blackmailed.
They're blackmailed. That's a good way of putting it. Sextortion. Yeah. But sometimes it results in the child thinking there's no way out and committing suicide.
Yes.
So, but what do you expect when we're dealing with a world that says that it's okay to have drag queen strip shows for kids in the children's section of the library? I mean, or drag queen story hour in the library, drag queen shows for kids elsewhere. It's the sexualization of kids breaks down a barrier in their minds.
They cannot forget
spirits.
it. It's very, very difficult to forget that you've seen that. I love that old song, "Be careful, little eyes, what you see." Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Yep. Because those little eyes and that little brain, which is not capable of understanding what these images mean and how to deal with them. It's very, very difficult. Getting into this idea of dealing with kids, I watched a documentary yesterday that goes along with Vicki Anderson's book, and it also goes along with the ministry of the late Russ Dizdar, and it's been carried on by Tom Dunn and Vicki, who is part of that wonderful team. And it was called The 24 Faces of, what was that? Milligan.
Billy Milligan.
Billy Milligan. It's a case that goes back to the 1970s. I was in my late teens and early 20s in the 1970s, and it was a time of a lot of, I want to use the word liberation, but you're not liberated. You're actually enslaved by what is called liberation. So it was this move away from the Bible Belt idea of appropriate behavior into, frankly, do as thou wilt, is the whole of the law, which is Crowleyan. No coincidence that Crowley was on, a certain Beatles album. I think 3 times. He'd been selected by 3 different Beatles. So yes, I want Crowley on there. This case was in Ohio, and there were rapes and kidnapping involved. And when fingerprints managed to identify the killer, the rapist, this Billy Milligan was arrested, and it was determined after many interviews and psychiatrists and psychologists coming in and sociologists and just about every ologist you can imagine coming in that he had multiple personality or he had DID. It was called MPS at the time. So he had at least 10 identities and later on he manifested 14 others. Was he lying? We don't know, but some of them were pretty convincing, and his childhood seems to fit the bill for that sort of disintegration, this fracturing of a child's mind. And when he was very young boy, his mother remarried, and this stepfather, according to what was discovered, took the boy out to a barn, sodomized him, made him dig a grave, put him in the hole, put a pipe over his mouth so he could breathe. Buried him, probably very shallow, but buried him. Yeah. And then urinated into the pipe. Now, again, did this actually happen? Probably. Is there proof of it? No. Stepfather denied it, of course. He would if he had done it. But the bottom line is that he was beaten, he was abused, and he was possibly sodomized. Those are the kinds of activities on a very young mind that will simply fracture it. I would argue that these pornographic educational moments will have a very similar effect in a very young mind. They won't know how to deal with it, and therefore, in order to forget it, they may manifest what's called by psychology another personality. One of the psychologists said when a baby is born, that child is born with the potential for many personalities. Now, does that mean that we sort of nature versus nurture, that yes, it's whatever you bring us up to be. No, I think she meant that we weren't integrated as one person. That is not biblically true. The Lord knew us. He knew Job in the womb.
Yeah.
He knew exactly what his spirit was, what his soul was like, everything he would ever do. And it's the fallen realm that wants to fracture our minds. And I believe that opens portals.
Yeah. And that's what, in fact, Vicki deals with that specifically in the book, not just pornography as a door that can be opened, but how this phenomenon is used by spirits, fallen spirits, to groom children.
Yes, exactly.
To show them things that they should not be exposed to very early on. And then, this is our secret, you're special, that sort of thing. The same kind of message that contactees in the UFO phenomenon get, you're special, we've chosen you, but don't tell anyone this is our secret.
The activities that take place in those who are taken in the UFO phenomenon, it's very similar.
Often involve some sort of sexual abuse.
Yes.
That's why, the late psychologist, Dr. John Mack, at Harvard, noted like 24 different points of correlation, maybe more, but at least 24. Mike Heiser's written about this, between those who report being victims of satanic ritual abuse and those who claim to have been abducted by aliens. And he said, statistically, it's improbable that these are not linked. He was coming at it from a secular perspective, from a biblical worldview. We look at these and say, yeah, of course they're both spiritually linked. So that is, boy, we got the crows like right outside the window here today.
They're all listening.
Yeah.
Hello. I haven't heard you mention Orions yet.
Yeah, hello, Urians, one of the characters in the Red Wing saga. So coming back to this idea of the shadows, this is a way for a way for them to enter and influence children at a very young age. And we as parents need to be more aware that this goes on. Most doctors and psychiatrists who look at the phenomenon in young children say, well, their minds are just growing and developing. They don't know how to deal with this. It's just, sleep interrupted, whatever. It's all medical. Give them more melatonin or whatever. No, there's a spiritual covering that needs to be in place. And we men have been neutered, spiritually neutered by growing up in a society that believes the Bible is just a collection of myths and fairy tales, that God, if he ever existed, is the divine watchmaker. He just sort of set everything in motion. Now he's stepped back and he's waiting for us to fix ourselves. Or that maybe there's another spirituality out there. I think the direction our society is going is not the one that Richard Dawkins would have hoped for. The neo-atheists is like, okay, we'll put a spike in Christian in the Bible and Christian faith, and then we'll enter a new age of Star Trek reason and enlightenment where all that superstition will be done away with. No, we're going back to the old paganism. And that is a much bloodier future.
Well, that's the idea. I mean, the Inanna-run world right now is one that is highly sexualized and highly
violent,
yes, but also this idea of gender fluidity. That's Inanna all over the place.
It is. And given that she is the entity, it is the entity of sex and violence, really. Carnality, gender fluid carnality, and mindless bloodshed going back 5,000 years. And that's just the written records that we know about. That's her bailiwick. So, yeah, when you pointed out couple of years ago that she fits the description of the woman who rides the beast in Revelation, the mystery Babylon. Like, oh yeah, okay, because that's kind of is where the world is going right now.
Yeah, she goes by a lot of different names.
Yeah, she does.
Her behavior is the same regardless.
So we're looking at a future that will become more centralized, and in terms of political control, but also theopolitical control behind the scenes, as these entities try to line up their ducks. And you know what happens when the ducks get lined up? The guys with the rifles in the shooting gallery start picking them off, trying to line things up for before Christ returns.
They want to get ready.
They want to set their man up.
Well, they've got, as we said, a tournament of shadows going on. And in this case, it's not, a shadow cast by a human being or an object. This is a shade. This is a Rapha. This is the Rephaim. These are the dead, the demons. And they are in contact with their daddies.
Yeah. Ezekiel 32 really points to that. A really interesting chapter.
You want to read that?
Well, yeah, let me see if I can find it here. I don't know if I've got my Bible app open here, but Ezekiel 32. Oh, looks like breaking news. U.S. has just been eliminated from the World Cup.
Oh, well.
Who were we playing in that match
I
in
can't
the round
remember.
of 16?
Somebody.
It wasn't the Chicago Bears, so I don't care.
You don't think so?
We might could use one or two of those guys as a place kicker, though. Cairo Santos is having a decent season.
Ezekiel 28?
Ezekiel 32, actually.
That's right. That's what you said.
And, all right, there we go. Easy E, 32. Ezekiel 32. This is a polemic directed first at the king of Egypt, but in a broader sense, it's very interesting. It's an overview of the geography of Sheol.
Yes.
32 beginning at verse 18. Son of man, and this is not the Son of Man.
Right.
The title that Jesus appropriated and used for himself. It's basically the angel guiding Ezekiel saying, Human one, wail over the multitude of Egypt and send them down, her and the daughters of majestic nations, to the world below, to those who have gone down to the pit. What's interesting about this, and I stumbled across this, majestic nations, the Adarim Goyim.
Ah, yeah.
Adarim is a term you will find in the dictionary of deities and demons in the Bible.
Entities.
Yes, entities, meaning the noble ones. This shows up in the Ugaritic, some of the Ugaritic texts as entities in the netherworld. So the Adarim of the Goyim, Adarim of the nations. In this context, since he's talking about Sheol and the Rephaim, it's really significant. Send her and the daughters of, Adarim Goyim, to the world below, to those who've gone down to the pit. Whom do you surpass in beauty? Go down and be laid to rest with the uncircumcised. They shall fall amidst those who are slain by the sword. Egypt is delivered to the sword. Drag her away and all her multitudes. Here we go, verse 21. The mighty chiefs shall speak of them with their helpers out of the midst of Sheol. The mighty chiefs is, let's see, the Ele, the Gibborim Ele. And so you might translate that as the chiefs of the Gibborim. But when you look at the Septuagint there for verse 21,
that's what I'm looking at.
It's pretty clear that they're talking about the giants. And the giants will say to you, come in the depth of clamor. Then whom are you mightier? And descend and sleep with the uncircumcised in the middle of those wounded by swords. The mighty chiefs shall speak of them. No, the giants will say to you.
That's in verse 21?
Verse 21. Now, I'm using the Lexham English Septuagint.
I was going to say, Brenton does not say that. Brenton's actually in verse 19. They shall fall with him in the midst of them that are slain with the sword, and all his strength shall perish. The giants also shall say to thee, be thou in the depth of the pit, to whom art thou superior? Yea, go down and lie with the uncircumcised. In the midst of them that are slain with the sword, there are Ashur and his company. All his slain have been laid there. Right.
And I argue in the second coming of Saturn that Ashur, it says Assyria in the Bible, but Ashur can mean Assyria.
No, this is a proper name. This is Ashur. This is that entity.
Right. Yeah. Ashur was just another name for Enlil or El or Molech. But when you go down to verse 27.
Saturn.
Yeah, Kronos, Shemyaza,
Second
Abaddon.
coming of Saturn. If you want to know more about that topic, you can look for Derek. By the way, there's a 5 Derek book offer in our store.
Oh, all the nonfictions.
Yeah, all the Gilby nonfiction, Derek P. Gilbert.
But yeah, that Ezekiel 32. And then you get to verse 27. And again, it's clear that he's talking about these demonic entities, the spirits of the Nephilim, destroyed in the flood. Verse 27, they do not lie with the mighty, the fallen from among the uncircumcised, who went down to Sheol with their weapons of war, whose swords were laid under their heads, and whose iniquities are upon their bones. For the terror of the Gibborim, terror of the mighty men, was in the land of the living. The Hebrew in the Masoretic text reads Gibborim Nophalim, and that's where you get the mighty, the fallen. But there are some who think that was mispointed, should be Gibborim Nephilim.
Well, verse 27 in the Brenton Septuagint says, and they are laid with the giants that fell of old.
Right, which shows that even if this argument that the Hebrew is mispointed from Nephilim to Nophalim, it doesn't really matter. The translators of the Septuagint, 200 years before Jesus, they understood what it meant. They're talking about the giants destroyed in the flood, who are now in Sheol, the spirits of the Rephaim, or the mighty men who were of old, the Gibborim. So there you've got this idea that they are in Sheol, and as you mentioned, Ashur, verse 22, Ashur is there. In other words, Enlil, El, Dagon, Molech, Saturn, Kronos, whatever name you want to use for this dude, Shemiyaza, he is there. And it appears that they are able to communicate as we look at the influence that entity still has on the world today.
Yeah.
The number one cause of death worldwide last year was abortion. So 42 million worldwide. So how does that happen if he's chained in the abyss, according to Peter and Jude? Well, how does a mafia boss control action on the streets? Minions.
Yes, exactly. So these demons, calling them minions, I think, diminishes their true abilities because they have powers far beyond ours.
Yes, that's true. They are not to be compared with these fallen entities, the fallen angels, the watchers.
No, these aren't cartoon entities. These are dangerous dudes.
But demons are dangerous.
Now,
yes.
compared to their daddies, compared to the watchers, they are not nearly as powerful. But these entities were terrorizing mankind.
Hence, the terror of the Gibborim was in the land of the living.
Yes. Yeah. So, we've burned up an hour.
We have. Boy, have had to learn over the last 17 years that I don't need a full flowchart spreadsheet and, because we just 3 topics and we'll cover an hour without any problem.
When we first started P.I.D. Radio, you had your little list. And
okay, got to talk about this, nope.
And I would derail you every time.
I've learned to go with the flow. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to listen. And again, get our app. It's where you get all of our content. We send out notices if you give permission. We don't force it on you, but if you are inclined to be notified every time we add something new, the app will send you a notification to your smartphone or tablet. And for the video content, if you want to use that to watch the videos, most modern or relatively recent smart TVs are compatible with Apple's AirPlay or Google's Chromecast, and you can cast the video from your device to the TV without any wires.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We do it all the time. Also, while you are sort of in the internet mode, go to gilberthouse.org, download our app. It's gilberthouse.org/app. Go to /travel if you want to go to Israel with us, or maybe sometime in another trip if you can't go in 2023. We'll be announcing future dates very soon. But also take a look at the store /store, and we've got a lot of really good deals right now. And if you are disinclined to use PayPal as an option, we have Stripe now.
Yeah, so you don't need to go through PayPal if you're not so inclined.
Or you could just send it through the snail mail.
We do that too. Yeah, we get orders periodically, and we got the mailing address at the store.
We do. By the way, if you send us an order through the mail, please put your email address on there.
Right.
That way you'll be notified with the tracking information.
Yes.
We don't send a bunch of spam on your email.
No, because we hate that ourselves.
We do.
So, but yes, you can get the tracking information that way, so you can see where your order is as it's coming to you. And also, we've got a streaming video site now where we've got a lot of those. The DVDs that we've produced are now also available to stream in full HD, which is like 4 times the quality of a DVD.
Yeah, pretty good.
And we've even got a discount on that through the holidays. So 20% off with the promo code, which is GHTV20. You'll find that link at the store as well, and that'll take you right to the site. So especially if you're overseas, because shipping a DVD from here to, say, New Zealand costs, but you can get instant access to the streaming video, and you don't have to pay for shipping.
Pretty good deal.
Yeah, and 20% off.
I know, isn't that great? So thank you for listening. Thank you, Lord, for helping us to know what we're talking about most of the time, some of the time. Okay, once in a while.
And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, PIDradio.com, Twitter @PID Radio, or by downloading our free app, PIDradio.com/app, or GilbertHouse.org/app. Our theme is Adoration by Casper McLeod, CasperMcLeodMusic.com. Join us each week or at our app for our Bible study, The Gilbert House Fellowship.